In today's video, I have a very interesting block for you. It looks a lot more complicated than it is to make, so let's look at the disappearing 4 patch. Hi folks, Tom the Colourblind Quilter here, and in today's video we are making block number 5 in our Behind the Block series, which is the disappearing 4 patch. We are making a sample quilt using all these beautiful blocks, and these blocks are helping us to build our skills as quilters. We are making blocks based on squares and rectangles, and it's going to help us with lots of different skills that are required. With every block there is always a free worksheet in the description below that has the fabric requirement and then step-by-step instructions with diagrams on how to make that block, and also you will find information on how to make the block in 3 different sizes. There's also a second free worksheet that has all the information of the fabric that you will need and all the cutting instructions to make the full sampler quilt, and you can get that in the description below as well for free. If you've missed any of the videos in this series so far, I'll put a link to the playlist in the corner so that you can catch up, and there's also a link to Prequilt in the description, which has the colouring page for the sampler quilt, and you can play with this tool for free, choosing colours and fabrics to make this sampler quilt your own. I have chosen to make this in just 2 colours, but you can make this in 3 colours, scrappy colours, anything you like. So let's get started then. To make this quilt block you are going to need 2 7-inch squares in fabric B, which is blue, and 2 7-inch squares in the background, and I am using white. This block begins with a simple 4 patch, and if you need a refresher on how to make a 4 patch, I will pop a link in the description below, but we're going to go through it very quickly here. So we'll begin by placing our 4 squares together in the 4 patch, and then we're going to place those right sides together and join with a careful 1/4 inch seam. I use a leader, and then I sew my 1/4 inch seam in the first piece, and then I take the next unit and I butt it up against it and sew right through. I don't pin, but you can pin if you like, or you can do what I'm doing where you align the edges and then just stop every now and then to adjust as necessary. Cut the pieces apart and then cut the leader off, and then take it to the ironing board where we're going to take the blue on top, set the seam, and then roll back towards the blue fabric and press that seam nice and flat, and then repeat for the second section, pressing both seams to the blue fabrics. Then you're going to rearrange them back again in the 4 patch and then place them right sides together, ensuring that those center seams nest. Back at the sewing machine, join with our careful 1/4 inch seam, and just make sure that those seams do nest in the middle as you come to it. Use a pin if you want to make sure that they don't move. And then snip that leader, and then we're going to go back to the ironing board. Set the seam and then press it to the top of the block, and that's your 4 patch. Now at the cutting table we're going to line up a ruler on the 1.5 inch mark with the long vertical seam, and we're going to make a cut, and then you're going to rotate your block on the mat or rotate your body 90 degrees, and then we're going to make another cut 1.5 inches away from the seam, and then you're going to rotate it again, and then you're going to repeat to make another 2 cuts that are both 1.5 inches away from the center seam. And then we're going to rearrange them about, just like I'm doing. Don't forget to flip that center square 90 degrees to the right, and then place the first columns right sides together, and then head back to your sewing machine to join these together. Again, with my little leader to catch any threads, we are going to join these 3 pieces together. Feel free to pin, and when you get to the end of the first one, just get the next one, butt it right up against it, and then sew it on through, making sure that the middle seams nest in that middle piece. And then once you're done, we're going to cut those pieces apart, and then we're going to head to the pressing board, and we're going to press these towards the blue fabric for the first one, and then towards the center for the second one, and then towards the white fabric for the third one. And then lay these back out and get the next column and put them in the place. Right sides together again, and back to the sewing machine. Again, feel free to pin these, but if not, just adjust as you go. When you get to the middle, make sure that those seams are nested. And then once you're finished sewing them together, cut those 3 pieces apart, and then we are just going to press these again. Pressing to the white on the top row. Careful not to stretch your fabric. and then pressing away from the center on the second row. And then finally pressing to the blue fabric this time on the last row. And then arrange these in order on your cutting board. Make sure you've got the right orientation, and then place the first and second row right sides together and make sure that those seams are all nesting beautifully. Join these together. Do feel free to pin those seams if you don't want them to move about, or you can just make sure and adjust as you go. You may find it helpful to use a seam picker or a stiletto to keep those seams nice and flat as you sew over them. And then once we're done, we're going to press the seam down to the bottom of the block, so away from the top. So just press it with your fingers first to help get it nice and flat, and then press it with the iron. And then put the final row on, make sure the seams are matching, and then sew it on through. Again, feel free to pin to make sure that they nest correctly. Make sure also that they don't catch on the stitch plate, because sometimes it can push them in the wrong direction. And then once you're finished, back to the ironing board for a final press to push that seam to the bottom of the block. Make sure it's nice and flat. Press with your iron, being careful not to swirl. And that is your block. And then look how beautifully flat the seams are on the back, all going in the right directions. So that was the disappearing 4 patch, and as I promised, it looks really effective, but it's dead simple to make. And the hardest part is just picking what colour you want to make. Now, let's take a look at some example quilts that you can make using this block. This block will be lots of fun with secondary patterns, and if you use different colours and different placements of it, you're going to get some really striking, beautiful effects. So in this first example, I have just made this using the block as you saw me construct it during the video, with the blue and with the white. And all I've done is I have arranged these so that blues touch and whites touch to give a sort of random checkerboard or chessboard effect. And that little thin border around the outside just helps to frame it and just tidies up the edges, and this looks really cool and really smart. In this second example, I have added sashing in between the blocks. So the blocks are still as they were in the first example. I haven't changed anything, but I've added a thin strip between each column and between each row. And what you can see is it gives this kind of crossed effect on the white blocks, and it just creates a slightly different look, which I think is pretty cool. Again, it's got a thin border around the outside just to tie everything together. But you can see, just with the addition of some thin strips, it really can create a completely different looking quilt. Now finally, for the third example, this is just having a little bit of fun. What I have done is I've replaced one of the blue squares with a green square, and then made the block the same. And then in Prequilt, what I've done is I've used the magic quad and the randomized rotate to create this completely random pattern. And then I've gone in and I've just tweaked a few where there was too many greens together, and it gives this completely random, very strange but kind of exciting looking quilt. And as I say, the only thing that I did different in this is instead of having 2 blue squares, I had 1 blue square and 1 green square. Now you could also do a similar effect to this with replacing one of the background whites. So for example, you could do a blue square, a red square, a white square and a grey square, and that would give you a completely different look to this quilt. So that was it, that was today's video, the disappearing 4 patch. I really hope you found this video useful. Don't forget, in the description below there are 2 free worksheets, one with how to make the disappearing 4 patch with all the instructions and fabric pieces that you need, and then a second one with all the fabric requirements and cutting instructions to make the entire sampler quilt. You can share your progress on Instagram using the hashtag BTBSeason1, and don't forget to tag me, the Colourblind Quilter, so that I can follow along with your progress on all these beautiful blocks. In the next video, we are going to be making the disappearing 9 patch, and I promise you this one is even simpler and is really, really beautiful block. So if you found this video helpful, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up, and if you want to know when the next video in this series comes out, do consider subscribing and click the bell so you get notified when the next video is released. And until next time, take care.